The one of the not in Duino, but in Rome, in the Sistine Chapel, there's a fresco over the altar of Jonah, with the large fish beside him, which is just about the same size as Jonah, both rather large. And the people look and they ask, who's the guy with the fish? It isn't obviously Jonah. So something happened when I was there, and a tourist had a question to ask of a tour guide there, and it created an interesting comparison. Fish story. Seeming to loom above the altar in the Sistine Chapel, Jonah resembles nothing more than an exhausted fisherman beside his catch. It's no surprise then when a tourist asks about the fish, and here's the Jonah story. It happens often. Less frequently, a workman listens, remembers childhood and the wooden boy, says, "C'era una volta Pinocchio." Fish stories are alike. Prophet or puppet, at first the lesson is obedience. For a stubborn preacher, an ornery piece of wood. At last, sea change brings both to resurrection. Jonah falls quickly, cries from the belly of hell, 3 days, 3 indistinguishable nights, until the Lord speaks to the fish. Pinocchio may wallow in odd detail, a mouthful of gold coins, a hat of bread, but in the end he meets the fish, the shark, the whale, some ocean womb, Geppetto in there too. And undigested father and son rise from the sea together, ready to raise holy hell.
Okay, this one's called At Heart. At heart, this will hurt you more than it hurts me. But the reason I can't stay with you isn't the way you chew with your mouth open, what I secretly call the dung heap of mastication, or even that you dip me out of the $125 your mom sent for Christmas to use towards the wedding gown I loved, the one you said made me look like a lace and satin sheathed sausage. The truth is, you're right, it did. But that's not as crucial as the fact that when I look at you, I imagine garrots and guillotines and guns, oh my, and the occasional atom bomb laying waste to your flesh, and I grin. Somehow that seems inappropriate. One ought to be more solemn planning true love's demise.
And this one sort of came as a result of a teacher telling me that I was writing too much about my family. And pretty much that's all I write about. So if you took that away, there wouldn't be much left. So anyway, the title is a run-on into the poem. She told me not to write about myself, about anyone in my family, anyone I know. And for a week, I couldn't write at all. All I could think about was a cobbler making shoes, the old saying, a cobbler's children go barefoot, her saying that now her son has started to write, she's learned what he thought of her as a mother. And I have been in a parched land, afraid of writing about what I know, about my boy whose hair I stroked as we sat today at the International House of Pancakes, after I had eaten a short stack with whipped butter and hot maple syrup, and he a Belgian waffle with strawberries and whipped cream. How sweet it was, and again how sweet when he leaned against me in a way he hasn't done in months. Leaned into me with his rangy 6'2" frame, and it was as though we were back so long ago, when I would hold him, when I didn't want to know which would be the last time I was nursing him. And back even before that, when he would open and close his mouth like a fish when he was ready to eat, a fish gulping water in order to breathe. And she said, you cannot write about your family, and it was as though a child had been torn from my arms. In 2 more years he will be leaving, There will be no more turbocharging of lawnmowers. This boy, who at 2 pretended his bed was a car, a box was a car, everywhere we sat a vehicle. But for now, in the International House of Pancakes, he leans against me, against the breast that fed him, and I'm afraid to move, as you are when you don't want to awaken a child who's sleeping.
My book, Attached to Earth, which just came out, if there is a theme, a central theme, it would be, I think, the juxtaposition of the sacred and the mundane, and the exploration of the relationship between those things, which I think inform each other a great deal, and maybe perhaps are one and the same, not distinct at all. So I think that the poems in here speak to that. And the first one I'll read is, I'll read the first one from the collection. It's sort of an introductory poem of sorts, and it's called Quilted Summons, and it's about a blanket that was given to my mother when she was pregnant with me by a friend of my grandmother's who's in her 80s now. And it's one of those old-fashioned quilts that's literally the pieces of a life all sewn together, scraps of fabric from collected over the years. And I think I feel like I don't see them much anymore, so I feel like it's extraordinary in that sense. Quilted Summons. While I grew in darkness and water, feet kicking against my mother's belly, an old neighbor in the country cut up handkerchiefs and summer dresses, her scissors in cracked hands sliding through fabric. Mother sweated in her close apartment, future looming large. The seamstress orchestrated her pinks and yellows, aquamarine for the edges. Folding it on bed's end, I catch it with a hangnail, unraveling the faded map. A footnote now, once it flapped, sun-drying on the clothesline, patterns brilliant against a blue sky. On a mid-November afternoon, the gift arrived. This pastel tapestry, a life in squares sewn together, summoned me 2 weeks early. Bound once in brightness, I touched the threadbare squares, hold them to my cheek, as I did many nights.